Welcome to the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne. I train people for improved personal and professional development, offering my assistance to those ready to develop their goals into tangible, focused, and achievable plans of action. And this podcast is one of the tools I use to accomplish my mission. Generally, when the timer hits 9 minutes and 59 seconds on this recording, you'll have a fully developed life lesson that you can take with you and begin to implement immediately. And if this week's lesson has a ring of familiar, then it's probably a reinforcement of a life change you've already started to implement. This podcast falls under the umbrella of my greater personal development efforts, all under the Your Better You brand. For more information on accountability coaching or to gain access to tools, tricks, and life hacks, visit yourbetteryou.info. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Now, here is this week's life lesson. In real time, as I record this, we are well past the Christmas season and the New Year season, going into a brand new, fresh year. 2019 happens to be. But whenever you hear this podcast, you will get the same message, and the message should ring true regardless of when it happens. We are out of the giving season, if you will. We're out the time where PR is expected to give to a point of ad nauseum, a point of insanity, if you will, along with the expectations of having to give a lot to a lot of people in the season. There's also the expectation of getting plenty in return, or sometimes just getting plenty because plenty of folks are giving in that way. There are plenty of folks who were selfish in the past season of giving, who essentially took all they could and gave as little as possible, which is fine if that's the way they work out. But this is a message about the giving part, and it's giving basically 365 days a year, always being giving, and changing your mindset from being a receiving mindset. Having a receiving mindset can be a detriment to yourself and to those around you, because number one, everyone around you, at least in your head, is now expected to give to you whenever possible. And you are probably not expecting to give to them whenever it is possible. So do you understand where the problem lies? If you don't, then you're probably stuck in the receiving mindset, and we'll have to break it down for you. If you do, you see exactly where we are going in the breakdown. It's easy to call people selfish if they are in a receiving mindset, but maybe that's not the case. Maybe they've come from a background where they don't believe that the giving is worth it. And that's problem number one. If you don't have a heart, a mind, a soul, if you will, if you don't have everything in order that you can understand how it is important to give of things to get things, or just give of things for the greater good and not get anything tangible in return, that's something you have to learn and sort of work out on your own in whatever means necessary. Maybe it's therapy, maybe it's the right person, maybe Cindy Lou Who has to give you a gift and you have a heart that's 3 times too small that has to grow on a magical event like that. But it's a mindset where you have to change yourself from a receiving person to a giving person. How do you do this? Well, number one, you start by just giving more and dealing with receiving less. And eventually the breakdown will come to something that will balance. You will see the rewards of the gifts that you give. You'll see them instantly in the people who really do need the things that you are giving. You'll also see a weird mirror image doppelganger site of people who are receivers who get more of what you're giving now that you are in the giving mood, at least in the mode, and you see what they actually do with the things that you are giving them. Some of them will use them to good use. Some of them will use them because they were given. Some of them will put them to the side and assume to get more stuff because they are receivers. They receive. They don't give. And you will get to see firsthand, once you start to look for those sort of traits, how these affect them and how it's probably been affecting you for all this time. So assuming you don't just have a grand heart, decide to give it all away, which is not what I'm saying right here, but you work through the processes you need to change your mindset. Let's say you're already a giver and maybe you're too much of a giver. Here, you need to become more of a slight receiver, at least an acceptor, if you will, or at least less of a giver to the point of pain. There are people who will give the shirts off their back, and that is something that people are very highly thoughtful of. People think really highly of those people who will do those sort of sacrifices. And there are people who have to give ultimate sacrifices, and literally ultimate sacrifices in the ways of what they do to do what they love and to show how they care for people. We think of first responders, we think of soldiers, we think of sailors, Marines, airmen, police officers, firefighters, EMTs, sometimes teachers, sometimes just people in the right place, counselors. Those people deal with things and put up with a whole lot of mess, and sometimes do give their lives in good causes and in bad to protect those that they have sworn to protect. Those are ultimate givers. Some of us, for whatever reason, seem to need to be givers as well, which is great. There are a lot of people who give in smaller ways or in smaller forms or just unseen that are ultimate people that do great things. But some of us, and I will say some of us because I've tended to be an overgiver at times, for whatever reason, maybe it's some sort of mental or emotional need that hadn't been fulfilled that we think we're fulfilling by giving. But some of us are too eager to give and give too easily, especially to people who are eager to receive and want to receive mostly. There needs to be a balance in your giving and receiving. And by balance, you should be giving more than you receive. But there needs to be a balance in the fact that what you're giving is not more than you have to give, and what you're receiving is not of a greedy amount where it's more than you can actually consume. Your giving and receiving accounts for all aspects, physical, emotional, time-wise as well. If you have a limited budget of whatever, limited cash, limited resources, limited time, and limited energy is a big resource we tend to ignore, then you have to budget that time, that energy, those resources, that cash to as many people as you have the ability to give to. And some people will be upset, especially the people who are natural receivers who have been used to getting all they can from you plus a little extra more because you hadn't found a way to stop yourself from giving. This is a perfect time to evaluate where your giving is going. As we said, calendar-wise, we're at the beginning of the year, and we're preparing here in the States for our annual taxes due in a few months. So as you look over all the paperwork for what you gave this year, it's a good time to evaluate whether it was really worth it and whether you should pull back on some of those givings or whether you should actually add to those givings, especially if the giving, since we're talking in a monetary sense, is investing in yourself. You can never give too much to yourself. That's the one real caveat of this message. But there are other people who could want more, who don't need more, or could use more, but you only have so much to give to that group. You can help them find other people willing to give great things for them, or find other people who need to back away from those people if they are receivers. If you see a receiver taking too much, you may be the person who sits that guy down, tells them they need to be a giver, or at least blocks off as many people that he is taking from because they don't have the capacity to save themselves from themselves, essentially, but from the receiver specifically. Giving and receiving is a touchy subject because it means a lot to different people and means slightly different things to each of those folks. And being a person who is willing to give is usually seen as a great thing, except when they're willing to give more than they have, which puts them in jeopardy, in trouble all the time, or they're willing to give to a person who does nothing but receive and take and does not give back anything, or at least not anything back worthy of the investment that is being given to that person. So think about it in this time or any time, essentially, when we have a chance to look at how you are handling your giving and receiving. If you're mostly receiving, evaluate whether you need to be receiving as much. If you're giving away most of what you have, evaluate how much you really should be giving away and find a happy medium. It's extremely doubtful that it's a balance of even amount of give and take. You usually give more and take in a little less because you have enough to take care of yourself. But it will be a difference. You'll find even if you are on a balance level, you may need to adjust the balance. Someone you're a main contributor to may not need as much at this time, and someone who you've not contributed much to may actually need you more than ever. And maybe you may be in need this time and can't give as much in general. That's fine. That's where you are. That's where we all are. Take the time to evaluate your giving and your receiving to make sure you have the proper balance for you and those involved that really do need you. Thank you for tuning in for this week's 10-Minute Life Lesson. Thank you for being with us for this new journey. Even though it's the new name, we're not quite a full year into this new name, but it's a full year of another year of doing this more or less podcast show. So thank you for that. Thank you for just being you. We're glad to have you as part of the community, trying to learn and grow on your own. And we're glad that you're here helping us to work on this podcast, and me specifically voicing it, learn and grow on our own as well. Without someone to listen to the message would fall on deaf ears, or actually no ears, essentially. So we're glad about that. We want you to tune into all we have and get in all the information we have for you for free at yourbetteryou.info. You can also, of course, sign up for paid coaching classes as well. That's something that you need. We would love to help you out with that. But we have plenty of resources, including every single week we publish 3 things: a very short podcast, Steps to Your Better You, which is only 90 seconds. This one, which is, of course, 10 minutes of content, or 9 minutes of actual lesson that you can take along with you right here, right now, and an article as well at yourbetteryou.info. Check it out for the podcast and that article, and, of course, other resources, some free, some paid as well. Contact me by emailing yourbetteryouinfo@gmail.com. And you can also email me directly at jcliffandpayne.gmail.com. Hyping 2 websites that we have good things going on. Of course, jcliffandpayne.net, the home for J. Cliff and Payne, and morebettermedia.com, which is now up and running, getting more or less better every single day, where we're going to provide very good content for the internets for you to consume. And if you're a person looking to get some media help, whether it's working on a full spread campaign for your business or your project, or just get a little extra media training, a little help in mastering your message, that is the home to find that, along with a third website, Mastering Your Message. But you can find it all at morebettermedia.com for your way to get access to all the media assets that I work on. Part of my business is media stuff, and very proud of the project. Not the prettiest looking project in the world, but it does get the job done. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. Thank you so much for sending us comments and what we can talk about. More of those great topics that you suggested coming up in the near future for podcasts on this one right here. It is the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast presented by yourbetteryou.info.